People think Scorpio is dangerous because they are intense. That's wrong. Scorpio is dangerous because they remember everything. Every betrayal. Every moment they trusted too much. Every time they opened their heart and paid for it. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Scorpio doesn't move on from pain. They build an identity around it. This is the dark side no one warned you about. Scorpio is often called the most powerful sign of the Zodiac. Strong, fearless, emotionally deep, the one who can survive anything. People admire their intensity, fear their silence, and romanticize their darkness. But what most people don't realize is that Scorpio's strength is rarely natural. It is constructed, layer by layer, scar by scar. What looks like confidence is often control. What looks like mystery is often self-protection. And what looks like emotional power is often unresolved pain that learned how to stay hidden. Scorpio doesn't fear pain. Pain feels familiar. What Scorpio fears is being exposed while powerless, being vulnerable without leverage, being emotionally naked in front of someone who could destroy them. At some point in their life, Scorpio learned a brutal lesson. Trust has consequences. And once that lesson is learned, it is never forgotten. This is where the dark side begins. Not with cruelty, but with a decision. Never again. Ruled by Pluto, the planet of death, destruction, and rebirth, Scorpio does not experience emotions in small doses. Everything is absolute. Love is total. Loyalty is sacred. Betrayal is irreversible. There is no such thing as a little hurt for Scorpio. Emotional wounds cut deep enough to change who they are. And when something breaks them, it doesn't just hurt, something inside them dies. The person they were before no longer exists. A new version emerges, harder, sharper, more controlled. This is why Scorpio feels intense to others. They are not dramatic by choice. They are compressed emotion, pressure held under control. They feel everything at maximum volume but show almost nothing. They don't express pain, they store it. They don't forget, they archive. Scorpio remembers details others dismiss, tone shifts, micro expressions, broken promises that were never spoken out loud. They don't collect memories for nostalgia. They collect them for survival. And this is where Scorpio becomes dangerous to themselves. Scorpio believes that emotional power comes from control, from never needing too much, from never showing weakness first, from always having the upper hand. They observe people carefully. They read between words. They sense motives before actions appear. They know when someone is lying, when affection is fading, when loyalty is weakening. This makes Scorpio feel safe, but it also makes them paranoid. Because once you see how fragile trust really is, you can never unsee it. Scorpio struggles to let go not because they enjoy holding grudges, but because letting go feels like erasing evidence. Evidence that they were hurt, evidence that they survived, evidence that their pain was real. Forgiveness feels like self-betrayal. Moving on feels like lowering their guard, so the past stays alive, not loudly, but constantly, quietly influencing every decision, every attachment, every emotional risk. In relationships, Scorpio wants depth that borders on obsession. They crave intimacy that is raw, honest, and consuming. Surface-level connections feel insulting. Casual love feels empty. They want to be chosen completely, without doubt or hesitation. But at the same time, they test. They provoke. They pull back. They watch how the other person reacts to distance, silence, or emotional pressure. Not because Scorpio enjoys manipulation, but because they are searching for proof. Proof that the other person won't leave when things get dark. The tragedy is that this testing often creates the very outcome Scorpio fears. People feel overwhelmed, mistrusted, or emotionally interrogated. They feel like they are always one mistake away from losing everything. And when they pull away, Scorpio interprets it as confirmation. See, I was right not to trust, so the walls go up higher. Scorpio's need for control extends beyond relationships. They struggle to ask for help. Dependency feels dangerous. Needing someone feels like handing them a weapon. So Scorpio becomes self-sufficient, emotionally independent, strong enough to survive alone. But strength without vulnerability turns into isolation. Scorpio may be surrounded by people, desired by many, admired by most, yet feel profoundly alone because no one is allowed to see the full truth. Inside, Scorpio carries emotional weight that never fully releases, anger that was never expressed, grief that was never witnessed, fear that was never soothed. Instead of being felt and released, these emotions are compressed into intensity. This is why Scorpio energy feels heavy. It's not darkness, it's density. Too much emotion packed into too little space. Power becomes Scorpio's coping mechanism. Control feels safer than trust. Dominance feels safer than dependency. Emotional self-sufficiency feels safer than hope. But this comes at a cost. Scorpio becomes hyper-vigilant, always scanning, always prepared for betrayal, always bracing for impact. Even in moments of happiness, part of them is waiting for the fall. This constant emotional alertness is exhausting. But Scorpio rarely admits exhaustion. Admitting fatigue would mean admitting limits, and limits feel like vulnerability. So they push through, they endure, they survive, until one day they realize they are living in defense mode, not life. The deepest wound of Scorpio is not betrayal. It is the belief that intimacy equals danger, that to love fully is to risk annihilation. And yet, paradoxically, Scorpio cannot live without depth. They cannot numb themselves the way other signs do. They feel too much for that. So they live in tension, craving, connection, fearing it at the same time. Healing for Scorpio does not come from becoming softer overnight. It comes from realizing that control is not the same as safety. That emotional armor protects wounds, but also prevents healing. Pluto does not rule stagnation. It rules transformation. Scorpio is not meant to live forever in survival mode. They are meant to shed skins, not turn them into prisons. A healed Scorpio still feels deeply, still sees beneath the surface, still carries emotional intensity, but they no longer weaponize it. Their depth becomes wisdom instead of suspicion. Their loyalty becomes devotion instead of fear. Their power becomes presence, not control. They learn that vulnerability is not weakness when chosen consciously. That letting someone in does not erase their strength. The most radical truth Scorpio must accept is this: real power is not the ability to survive alone. Real power is the courage to connect without armor, to trust without guarantees, to love without control. And when Scorpio finally allows themselves to do that, something extraordinary happens. The darkness they carried stops being a cage. It becomes fuel, not to destroy, but to transform.